Clark, step back three. Oh, she hit it and draws the foul. Welcome back, Caitlin Clark.
Geno Auriemma and the UConn Dynasty thought they were untouchable. They thought the UConn Mafia would rule women's basketball forever. But they didn't count on one girl from Iowa. While Geno was busy making slick comments in the media, Caitlin Clark was quietly dismantling his empire brick by brick. We're talking about a power shift so massive, it's literally costing UConn and its legacy stars millions in lost revenue and relevance. If you're riding with Caitlin and the future of the game, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're tracking this drama every single day, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Sit tight, because the numbers don't lie, and Geno is definitely not going to like this. Let's get into how Caitlin Clark quietly destroyed the UConn Mafia.
If you're a college player and you're a great college player, like Caitlin was, the delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying the disrespect that they've shown to the WNBA. There's a huge target on this kid's back. Okay, this kid's coming into the league. And Diana said it best. This kid's in for a rude awakening.
Revenge is a dish best served in total silence. For most people, $1 million for 8 weeks of work is a dream come true. A life-changing windfall that you sign for before the ink even hits the paper. But for Caitlin Clark, that $1 million offer wasn't a reward. It was a white flag. It was a desperate plea for help from the very people who spent years trying to convince the world she wasn't that special. When the news broke that Clark had officially declined to join the unrivaled 3-on-3 league, the shockwaves didn't just hit the sports world, they leveled the ivory tower of women's college basketball. This wasn't just a business decision. It was a calculated, icy response to a decade of disrespect. She didn't need to send a tweet, and she didn't need to do a sit-down interview. By saying nothing and walking away from the money, Caitlin Clark did something much more devastating. She stripped the legendary Geno Auriemma of his power. To understand why this rejection felt like such a massive blow, you have to go back to a time before the sold-out arenas and the record-breaking TV ratings. Long before she was the face of a movement, Caitlin Clark was just a kid in West Des Moines with a dream that had a very specific name: UConn. Growing up, the University of Connecticut wasn't just a school. It was the gold standard. It was the dynasty that Geno Auriemma built with an iron fist and a legendary eye for talent. For a generational talent like Clark, playing for Geno was supposed to be the natural path. She waited for the phone to ring. She waited for the letter. She waited for the man who claimed to know everything about greatness to recognize it in her. But the phone stayed silent. Geno didn't call. He didn't visit. He didn't even send a scout to make her feel like a priority. In the world of elite recruiting, silence isn't an accident. The message to Caitlin was clear. You aren't UConn material. But that silence became the fuel for a fire that would eventually burn down the old way of doing things. Instead of chasing the blue blood prestige of Connecticut, Clark stayed home. She chose Iowa, a program that had never seen the kind of heights she was about to take them to. While Geno was busy managing his roster of 5-star recruits, Clark was in the Midwest, rewriting the entire playbook of what a female athlete could be. She wasn't just winning games. She was creating a culture. Those deep logo threes weren't just highlight reel plays. They were a middle finger to everyone who thought she needed a system to be successful.
I always wanted Geno to call me just because he's Geno. He's one of the best coaches of all time.
Every time she stepped onto the court in Iowa City, she was proving that the center of the basketball universe didn't have to be in Storrs, Connecticut. It could be wherever she decided to stand. And yet, even as she became a global phenomenon, the UConn Mafia couldn't help but try to diminish her rise. The tension finally boiled over in the summer of 2024. Caitlin was a rookie in the WNBA, carrying the weight of an entire league on her shoulders, bringing in millions of new fans and unprecedented revenue. You'd think a legend like Geno Auriemma would be celebrating this growth. Instead, he went on national television and chose violence. He didn't just critique her game. He attacked the people who supported her. He called her fan base delusional. He suggested that the hype was disrespectful to the veterans who came before her. He even mocked the idea that she could be an MVP candidate in her first year. It was a stunning display of bitterness from a man who realized the game had moved past him. He tried to frame her success as a fluke, a product of clueless fans who didn't understand the real basketball he had been teaching for 40 years. But he made a massive tactical error. He underestimated the loyalty of those delusional fans, and more importantly, he underestimated Caitlin's memory. What the public didn't know at the time was that behind the scenes, a new business venture was forming. The unrivaled league was being built by former UConn stars Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart. It was designed to be a high-stakes, high-paying winter league to keep WNBA stars stateside. And who was one of the primary investors and advisors behind the scenes? Geno Auriemma himself. The irony was thick enough to choke on. The man who had spent months publicly downplaying the Caitlin Clark effect was now part owner of a league that absolutely required that effect to survive. Without Caitlin, Unrivaled was just another niche sports project. With her, it was a multi-million-dollar juggernaut. They needed her to save their investment. They needed the delusional fans to open their wallets. So, they did the only thing they could. They swallowed their pride and offered her the biggest contract in the history of women's basketball. The offer was staggering. Reports suggested a base salary of over $1 million, plus equity in the league. A deal that would have made her a part owner alongside the very people who had spent years throwing shade. It was a rescue rope, disguised as a golden opportunity. The basketball world waited with bated breath. Most analysts assumed she would take it. How could she not? It was a chance to play with the best, earn a fortune, and solidify her status as the queen of the sport. But they forgot one thing. Caitlin Clark doesn't need their validation anymore. She had already won the Rookie of the Year. She had already made the All-WNBA first team. She had already finished fourth in MVP voting, exactly where those delusional fans said she would. She had reached the top of the mountain without a single bit of help from Geno or the UConn machine. When the deadline passed and the word came out that Clark was staying home, the silence from her camp was deafening. By saying no, she didn't just reject a contract. She issued a final verdict on the Geno Auriemma era. She proved that he no longer holds the keys to the kingdom. For decades, if you wanted to be a star in women's basketball, you had to go through Geno. You had to seek his approval, play in his system, and stay in his good graces. Caitlin Clark officially ended that monopoly. She showed every young player watching that you can build your own brand, your own fan base, and your own legacy on your own terms. The $1 million stayed on the table, but Caitlin walked away with something far more valuable: her total independence. This rejection was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Think about it. If she had joined the league, she would have been helping Geno line his pockets. She would have been the talent that made his investment successful. By refusing, she left the unrivaled league in a precarious position. They had built their entire marketing strategy around the hope of her involvement. Now they are left with a massive bill and a product that lacks the one person the world actually wants to see. It's the ultimate checkmate. She didn't have to argue with him on a podcast. She didn't have to call him out in a post-game press conference. She just let the reality of her absence do the talking. The UConn Mafia finally met someone they couldn't recruit, couldn't intimidate, and couldn't buy. The fallout from this decision is still being felt. Coaches and executives across the league are realizing that the old rules no longer apply. The power has shifted from the institutions to the individuals. The gatekeepers are being locked out of their own gates. Geno's comments about delusional fans haven't just aged poorly. They've become a symbol of a dying era of sports leadership. He bet against the fans, and the fans won. He bet against Caitlin, and she took the house. As we look toward the future of the WNBA and the global growth of women's sports, this moment will be remembered as the day the hierarchy crumbled. Caitlin Clark didn't just decline a call. She hung up on the past. But this is only the beginning of the story. While the headlines focus on the money and the snubs, something much bigger is happening in the shadows of the league. There are new alliances forming and old rivalries that are about to get much more personal. If you think the no to Unrivaled was the end of the drama, you aren't paying attention to the moves being made behind closed doors. The shift in power is creating a vacuum, and there are people ready to fill it in ways you won't believe. What happens when the old guard finally realizes they've lost for good? The next move in this high-stakes game of basketball chess is already in motion, and it's going to change everything you thought you knew about the WNBA.